Hello, and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a podcast where each week we talk about some Dungeons and Dragons and how we can fit it into our role-playing campaigns. This week...
Look at that. Look at
I
that.
know, look at that. Spoiling the intro, though, Fiona over here.
I'm just there going, gorgeous.
Perfection.
Perfection. I'm just clapping like Shia LaBeouf, you know.
And the one who is being clapped on the stage winning the Oscar for Best Introduction to a Podcast is me, Hamilton.
Hooray!
I think I'm back because I think last week it might have been someone else.
It was, yes. We had, because I've not put the social media post up because I have been very busy. Yes, we had Rob last week doing Planebreaker.
Which is what? I haven't listened to it yet, so I also... What was
it? Spoilers. So, no, it's basically it's a multiverse source book, essentially this idea that a moon has careened through your reality and is careening through all different realities, and you can get on it, and it's slightly weird, but it's just basically a way to get to different multiverse places. And then it's got a whole ton of extra plane stuff as well, which we'll be covering at some point.
Ooh. Set in the realms of D&D or its own realm?
Any realm you want it. It uses a cipher system, but also uses there's a lot of inspiration from the wheel cosmology, which we've talked about on I always forgot what it's called. Travel. Yeah, so it's like the travel book club, that other thing we do. So yeah, so it's all related because obviously we've talked about it before that the multiverse is really zeitgeist just now. We've got all the Marvels, all the
everything everywhere all at once.
Everyone's like, you know what we don't like? Our own plane. You know,
yes.
You know where we need to go fuck up? Other people's planes.
Yeah, not just planets, other planes of existence.
Exactly. But you've all been well though. I know it's been a little while since we've actually sat down and chat. We're always like, we should do this more often, and then we're both super busy in a way.
Exactly. Well, I've been to France 36 hours. I've been up into Wales to see the Middle Earth, basically. I can see why, like, that is Middle Earth. Like, Wales is just like, and that's why they went to New Zealand, because New Zealand is like big Wales. And so, like,
they use it on their tourist boards. Welcome to New Zealand. It's big Wales, twinned
Wales. Yeah, twins with Wales. It is. There's as many sheep in Wales as there is in New Zealand, I'm sure. I go up there obviously regularly, and I love going up there. I always have to listen to the Skyrim soundtrack when I'm up there, because it's just like awe-inspiring. And yes, I went and saw a waterfall I saw like 10 years ago, but now is all Instagrammy, supposedly.
Oh, really?
They're all a bit like, everyone's a bit like, really bloody Instagrammers coming down here. So I took some photos and put it on Instagram. But
right. You were like, I don't approve of this. Click. Yeah, click. I'm the same.
I actually didn't put a photo of the waterfall on my Instagram. I put photos of everything else. So there you go.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, so that was nice. And I had to buy new cars, so I've got my new car, my new wheels. And that's it. What about you? How have you been? Busy, Fiona? Busy person?
Busy as always. Busy doing it and not much. I've been teaching improv, which has been good. I actually, using your wonderful, we had a chat off stream about, and you were like, you know what you should do? Improv workshops inspired by the 13 classes. So I've mentioned it, and they were like, we'll get back to you. And I was like, right, well, it sounds like we're going to have to write this down and expand on all the things. So yeah, as an improv, like, because it's true, like, as you were saying, every D&D class or general sort of like careers, essentially. So barbarians could be like, how do you deal with anger in an improv scene? Artificers could be related to object work and creating things. And bards typically could be musical improv, which I'm like, I might get somebody else in to do that because that sounds too scary. I do know Chloe. Yes, exactly. So it all works out. So yeah, so that's on my mind just now. But so I've done some of that. I went last night to see The Bird City, which is the immersive theatre thing. And I can tell you, Hamilton, it went right over my head. I had no idea. No idea what was going on. It was very cool, but I was a bit like, who are these people? What's going on? And then there's a wiki afterwards, which also made no sense.
Were you like everyone else at the Parks and Rec restaurant where the drinking bar where they make the drinks, and you're just like, I don't get this. But everyone's like, this is the cool kids, like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I get it. I dig it.
It felt very vibes over substance, as somebody was saying to me. And I was like, and it was really funny to go out afterwards, because I'd obviously went on my own because I'm a loner to these things. And there was clearly people who'd been brought there by their partners who were really into Grecian myths and stuff. And I followed someone to the train station, and you could hear their partner say, so it was all based on this Greek myth who had this, and the person was like, yeah, right. And clearly had no idea. But it didn't matter because they were there for their partner, which was very, very sweet.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was an incredible sort of setting. I love stuff like secret cinema, all that sort of thing. But it was 3 hours of interpretive dance. And I'll be honest, a lot of the times I got lost. And then I was like, I don't know where I am.
How many rooms are there?
Oh, loads of. There was clearly places that I did not find.
You're meant to be.
Yeah, well, or meant to be. Yeah, I was like, help.
Fiona's still stuck in the foyer.
I'm not Fiona. Yeah, because most of it was like in a hotel. It was like a Hotel Elysium. It was called. I was like, I know where this is from. But then some of the doors were locked, and it's clear that some of the actors would take you in for a one-on-one and take you in. But I never got took in anywhere because I was too busy like trying to get into places. And they were like, oh, you're too keen, and I'm like, no, just I'm cool, you know.
I'm down. I'm hip. I know the lingo.
It was definitely an experience. I'm glad I went to do it.
I'm just imagining you with one of those check rolly bags.
Yeah, very much so. Speaking of experiences. Here we are. We finally made it. It's time for Bigby's. So today we're looking at sort of giving our first impressions, our first sort of quick read through of Bigby's Presents Glory of the Giants, which has actually been out for some time, as we discovered a couple of episodes ago. We were like, it's out digitally.
Yeah, forgot about the digital early release. Whoops.
And no doubt by the time we finish this recording, we'll be like, oh wait, the Shattered Obelisk is probably out now.
Don't, it probably is.
So this is a source book, all things giant related. And we're going to probably compare it a little bit to one of your favorite books, Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. So in case you are a new listener to this, I would highly recommend checking out one of the first episodes we ever did on DM's Book Club, which was Giants. We talked about the different giants and the sort of culture of it here, as it was in Vola's Guide to Monsters and the Monster Manual. And this is supposed to be like, I don't know, bringing giants back into the fray, sort of thing. For me, because I love giants, I've spent a whole campaign with a character related to giants. And of course, as soon as we finish the level 20 campaign, this book comes out. And I'm like, this would have been very useful for me.
5 years ago.
5 years ago. I will say I am a massive fan of the stories of the giants, the history of the giants. It's something I can easily bite into, but I appreciate, just like if people, are more fans of dragons, say yourself, it might not be for everyone. So this is why I'm sort of just having a review of it, see what we'd like about it, whether the structure of the book, is it something we'd use going forward? Is there any other books that we would use the same structure that we would actually like, for example, like any other sort of like monsters or typical villains we would use in D&D? That's what I'm sort of getting out of our discussion today.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I want to explain from it as well. Like where I've looked when looking at it, and I don't know if you agree with me. I think it's very similar, as you said, to Fizban's. I think though, the story of the giants as an overall, I think is so much more related to a real world existence, which is very obvious which one they're talking about. Whilst dragons feel very unique to Dungeons and Dragons. I know that's in the title. Like someone's really thought about what each of the dragons are. They've had to make them up because there's not as much, well, I'm sure there is a load of lore in reality about dragons, but I think they haven't taken one particular culture's response to dragons and then put that in. It's kind of its own ideology, and it's got its own series of like organizational structure and everything like that. Whilst that's my main takeaway from the like lore bit of it, is that this is definitely very much related to Norse mythology and sort of Northern European mythology rather than its own thing. But it's my first takeaway for people, if people are going to come to it. I think like that's the big difference, maybe. Yeah,
like you'll read through and go, I've definitely heard names like this, or I definitely can visualize it maybe a bit more. But yeah, the dragons in general, because they are obviously in quite a lot of different cultures and mythologies as well. So they've drawn different inspirations to put it together. And what I do quite like, just to start off, is that in the lore of it, it's obviously, it says like, here it is in the Forgotten Realms, but we're also going to cover the other places as well. So like Kryn comes into it a little bit. Giants, what their impact in Kryn is, it's different. Same with Greyhawk, and same with Eberron as well.
It also mentions Magic the Gathering as well.
Yes,
which sounds like there's a one, I can't remember what the realm was, but it was like, oh, here's a thing about a Magic the Gatherings one, and I was like,
they're really trying to tie in everything. So you're like, oh, you like this? Yeah, you're gonna like this other thing, which I get, but it is like, I guess because foremost, the way it sort of describes the giants overall, it is, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like it is tied to the Forgotten Realms and Toril and all that sort of thing. Yeah. And then it goes, oh, side note, in Kryn, in this, it's the other thing, which makes sense because I think a lot of people will be coming to giants in the Forgotten Realms. That is what the most
things. It's the most. It's where it's their main realm. there's only one book in Eberron, isn't there? I think Rachma's in Eberron as well, isn't it? But
that's like a free adventure, which again is on the list for us to look at some point. But because Eberron is a setting, and it's again slightly different. And the same I would say for Darksun and any of the other sort of older settings we covered, that giants are featured a little bit differently in there. And I think actually Darksun, you can play a giant, a half giant or something, as what we talked about. So I think it starts off by saying like, this is going to be Forgotten Realms focused, but we are aware there are other places and other things as well.
Many worlds.
And it's this idea that there's always been animosity, rivalry between dragons and giants, which culminated in this 1,000-year war.
It doesn't really go into it very much, though. I felt, as someone who was hoping to see, why are the giants against the dragons? It was kind of like, there's this war. It's happening.
Yeah.
We don't like each other. Why? I'm inferring a lot of why, because like giants think that they are the rulers of the world. Some of them do and stuff like that. Or maybe it's a battle for like supremacy, I guess. But I don't quite understand why they're in this constant battle. But maybe I missed something. I don't know.
I would say there was like one line where one of the dragons sort of goaded them into having this war with it. But it was like a one-liner thing. I definitely would have appreciated it saying like, here's what is in the lore, is this like this happened, but we want you to do it. Here's another table of you saying where it's from, because let's get it out of the way. There are a lot of tables in this book.
Oh my gosh. That was the same with Fizzbands as well, though. Fizzbands was a lot of tables, to be honest.
But this was like from sizes to pride to plot hooks to obviously enclaves, which
treasures in bags of treasure hoards.
What's going to be in your bag? Yeah, exactly.
Should we talk through like the contents then, how it's arranged?
Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Starts off with the saga, which is a nice introduction. I thought it's a lovely little bit of prose that sort of brings you into the story of Diancastra, who is the youngest daughter, who is half mortal of Annam, who's the progenitor, the all-father of the giants. And it's a lovely story, and introduces Bigby and how they relate into the story. Then you get your character creation. And then you get how to play giants, and giants in play in general, so which gives you a bit of the structure and socializing and organizations. Then you get some adventures, which are good. You get then some enclaves, then the treasures, and then the bestiary, and then a little bit of art and adventure hooks, which is fun. As we were saying, it's very similar to Fizzbands, which starts with a lovely elegy for the first world. Talks about the dragons. You get character creation. You get dragon magic. Then you get dragons in play, very similar. Layers and hordes. And then they split it into this Draconomicon, which gave you like dragons and then their layers for each of those dragons. And then a bestiary of things that are dragon related. So like you'd have all your key dragons. And then you got things like dragon blood ooze and elder brain dragon and ghost dragons and stuff as a second bit, which is kind of cool. So it's a similar structure. The only addition I think is the magic. I think there's still magic items in this, but there was particular magic to this rather than the sort of backgrounds only sort of magic.
We won't go over too much in the character creation stuff because we've covered it in other episodes, because there actually isn't as much, I would say, as compared to the Fizzbands, because Fizzbands obviously is like, we're going to give you gem dragonborn, we're going to give you other features and stuff, so it's quite hefty, and like you get a couple more subclass options, etc., all good stuff, and those draconic feats, which then in this one we've only got one subclass, which is the barbarian subclass. Again, if I'd known about this 5 years ago, I would have taken that up. The two background related ones, this idea of the rune carver and the foundling, which I love. The foundling, I don't know if that came up in one of the unearthed arcanas, but it's such
I remember. I remember the rune one.
Yeah, which is basically this idea that you've been found in some way and taken in by giants, whether that's you were lost, an orphan or something, or if they kept you as a pet. I think my favorite one was that you were playing hide and seek as like a plot hook or a background, is that you were playing hide and seek and you stumbled into a cloud giant's castle, and they keep you now, and you're like, oh no, shit. That's something that would happen to me.
Going back to our classic, a handbag.
A handbag? Yeah, you're in the bag.
Yeah, you're in the handbag. Just because they keep talking about bags.
Which is a very cool concept when we get to it. I love this idea, because again, something I hadn't really thought of. And then they have obviously the wide selection of feats. And it goes through that thing, is like, if you're playing like a giant, here's some other feats that you can give to other players so they don't feel left out, which is great.
They're good feats.
The Strike of the Giants one, which are all flavored for the different six. Yeah, we've covered it before, and I think they've tweaked it ever so slightly, although I couldn't tell off the top of my head, but they are very fun.
So good. Like literally all of those Strike of the Giants perfect.
Yeah.
Like, gives you more damage, and every single one is more individual. Like the Cloud Strike gives you only 1d4 thunder damage, but then you get a Wisdom saving throw and you become invisible to the start of your next turn, which is so cool. Or like the Storm Giant, which only do 1d6 lightning, but then they must succeed to have a disadvantage on attack rolls, whilst ones that don't have an additional, just like fire, gives you 1d10 fire damage. So it's a really punchy feat, and I like a good punchy feat because I think we miss out on stuff. And then the fourth level ones are even more cooler. Do you know what I mean?
They're
like
brutal, I think, is the thing. Like, I'm just trying to, like the Ember of the Fire Giant, Fury of the Frost Giant. They've got great sounding names. And they're all different as well. Like, I think the Ember of the Fire Giant, that's the only attacking one. Everything else is either like a reaction or a bonus action, or the Hill Giant one is a passive one of where it's all about hit points, but it's the Iron Stomach and all that sort of thing.
I love that. That's so good, that one. And the Cloud Giant one, because I love having Misty Step, because I just would like to build Nightcrawler. I would like take all the feats so that I can get Misty Step like 20 times a day, because then that's what I want to do. Because with the Guile of the Cloud Giant, when a creature you can see hits you with an attack roll, you can use a reaction to give yourself resistance to that attack's damage, and then you teleport to an occupied space that you can see within 30 feet of yourself. You can use this number of times equal to proficiency bonus. So like your proficiency bonus can go up to 5, can't it?
Yep.
And so if you think you've got 5 of those, you can get that Shadowfell Touch, which gives you 2 Misty Steps. And then you could choose the Dark Elf from the Elf of the Shadow Elves, the
Shadowkai,
give you Misty Step 1. So that's 8 Misty Steps I've got in a day. I'm like, I just want to build.
You're going to be all over that battlefield. You're like, where's Hamilton? You're like, ha, 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 ha.
Exactly.
There's always a table for something. I know we make fun of it, but like, we've got for like the Giant Foundling, you've got origin stories, like I've already said, but personality traits as well. One of them that stood out to me was like, every avalanche begins as a single pebble. And you're like, okay, whoever you're playing is a bit odd. They're going to do stuff like that. Rune Carver is like, what kind of style of rune? How do you do it? How do you inscribe your stuff? Personality traits, all that sort of thing. And then there has a little like role play thing for anyone. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the barbarian. You don't have to it's like, how can you tie your character narratively to the myth and might of giants? So it's like, okay, think about the elements and environments. What does that mean for your druid? Is it something like that? Giant ancestors, maybe you are physically bigger. Giant lord, are they rivals? Do you have giant made accessories? Do you follow the gods of the giants? Are they a patron? Or do you like dinosaurs?
And I like that at the end. Or do you just like dinosaurs?
But what I liked about it was quite short and simple, and it just gave like 1 or 2 examples, but it was enough to be like, you don't have to specifically be like, I'm a big person. I was a loner and I got separated from my tribe, and now it's like you could be anything and it could fit it into this. And I just thought that was really cool. And again, it's something that I would say if I was a GM, I was like, we are going to play Storm King's Thunder, but you are all going to have a bigger tie to giants, so it's going to be a different way we're going to retrofit it in some way. But what kind of classes are you thinking? Okay, and then tying in from there. I just thought there was just lots of really interesting ideas, which were very short paragraphs, just to help the GM and the players be like, oh, that could be just a different way of looking at it, which I just really enjoyed. And going from sort of like big heroes, big stories thing to like, okay, so this is something that is personal to you, but what about if it wasn't just you, it was the environment? So like where you were born, you're born in giant ruins. There's like some sort of chaotic nexus that you've just been living next to, or you've been living underground, all that sort of thing. And then again, tables upon tables about like, what does your home place look like, etc. And then there was the final table, which I loved, which is called Tall Tales. You're like, I saw a giant once, and they're like, yeah, whatever. Like, no, I did. I'll prove it to you.
Those the character creation bit, I think, is some of the best bit, and moving into the next step as well, the role playing giants. I think they have put. The writers have put a lot of effort into this, and have really thought, like as you were mentioning with the like, how can you relate to giants? They've really thought, okay, we're not just gonna do the Goliath Furbolg thing. We're gonna talk about everything, because there's so much. There is a lot to them, even though I was sort of saying that it is kind of focused around this one sort of like main story. They do move outside those boxes, and they do make them quite interesting outside of just the ordering and all that stuff.
Let's talk about the giants in play there. So yeah, as you said, there is a lot of role play elements. Like it says, think about size, and then it gives you an example of like, if you're at the table, stand over your players. And I'm like, amazing. If I was online, I would angle my camera to be like lower than me, and so I'd be like up like this, so the camera angle, horrible chin, obviously, but at least then it could, it'd just be quite fun from that. And like this idea that they're out of touch as well. Like they don't, for them, time passes slowly, so they're referring to you of members of a civilization that's long since dead. And you're like, I know, actually, that's a bit no,
not that anymore. Coming up to us and going, so how, Roman Empire, members of the empire, and you're like, no, Roman Empire was quite a while ago. It's fine.
It's like, no, everything's fine.
Volume, I thought was funny. Don't yell at your players.
Talks about the scriptures, like if you laugh, you feel the rumble, you feel the bass through your legs. I love that, and like the pride of it as well. Because that's the thing, is that they, as you said right at the beginning, they think of themselves, or some of them think of themselves as deities and gods, and so they have this big pride aspect to them if they're part of the ordering as well. So I just thought that was really cool. But one thing I do want to mention, I don't think it's in this chapter. I think it's a little bit later on, but it talks about how do you play giant children. So it talks about like they're not monstrous, they're innocents, they might not know what they're doing, it's like big toddlers, right? They don't actually know what they're doing. So how do you treat them in combat? How do you deal with it? And you should talk to your players in a session 0 about whether or not that's something you want to consider in your game. That struck me as incredibly sensitive, like really valuable, because of course that's what they are. They're just big children. They vulnerable and defenseless, even though they're causing destruction probably where they go. But like
I did think that was really positive. Just reminded me, because they do mention the children of giants in one of the I think it's in one of the adventures, because they you talked about mentioning the other planes. They talk about Kryn, they talk about Oerth, which is Greyhawk, and the other one, Eberron.
Zendrick. Eberron begins with X, which we'll never know until we get there. We'll never know.
Get there. And they were saying, they even mentioned also, like, Dungeons & Dragons has featured giants in many of its old adventures. First time I've ever heard them mention an old adventure before, which I thought was actually kind of weird, because it was just like that. And it goes, as you will find in like one of the first ever adventures, which was a 3-part series called I can't remember where it was.
I'm looking for it now.
It's Giant Adventures, and it was
Against the Giants is what it came into, and it is presented in Tales from the Yawning Portal.
Yes,
I agree. And then it talks about some of the ones like Clash of Titans, Delve into the Past, which is an Eberron one, and then there's a table later on which is like giant-sized schemes, and it says inspired by the plots of famous dramas, and there's one that's like Hamlet.
It's like, I was like, well, there's going to be one that's Hamlet, because that's obvious, because it will do, because it's Nordic to a certain extent,
yes,
like Danish.
Absolutely.
I've never heard Dungeons and Dragons admit to plagiarism. Do you know what I mean? Like, but it is plagiarism because it's how many years old, and obviously it is all, like, as that classic meme says, what you need for every D&D campaign: dice, stats, take players, DM, plagiarism. Because that's how you make a D&D campaign. But it was Against the Giants, and it mentioned it, and I was just like, it talked about originally published in 1978. You're like, I've never heard you talk about anything pre-2000.
They've clearly gone like, well, let's look at what's back, and then they say, you can find it here. So, right. It says like, you don't even have to look at any of these tables. You could look at these things as well. And I was like, what?
Yeah, exactly. And it was just, you know what? It just felt so much more connected. Going back to editions is a difficult business, because there's a lot of things that need a lot of work.
Legacy content,
which makes a lot of sense. But I think there are some good storylines in the past, and I think there is a past of like real creativity. Like, we've looked at Planescape, we've looked at Spelljammer. They're great systems, and I think it's funny, like in the Spelljammer one, they hardly go, you could go look at Adventures in Spelljammer.
I literally was about to say, would you imagine if they go, so if you want to find out more, here are some ones, I guess because they haven't been updated to 5th edition, maybe, but even then, like, just mentioning it, saying, there's plenty of them, such as
mentioning the legacy is just weird, of like, I don't know, it just feels a bit strange.
I think you're completely right, because that struck me as like, this is incredibly like self-aware, and it was really cool. And then that right at the end, it was like, also, Giants Realms. One I instantly thought of was like, Gulliver's Travels. I was like, that comes up. Journey to the Center of the Earth comes up, and then it said also that English classic fairy tale, Jack and the Beanstalk, and I was like, is that an English fairy tale? I thought everyone knew that story of Jack and the Beanstalk.
No, it's because we're English.
I see it every year at Panto, so I was like,
exactly.
Shoot.
I mean, it's been taken the piss out of in a lot of like popular. It's a popular culture in the Americans as well, I think.
spend too long on it, but obviously it talks about the religions and the gods in general, and like talking about Annam and then his 10 children. So the 6 lineages of the giants, each one sort of like from Stormmouse. Again, one criticism, no pronunciation guide. Again, and I'm like, come on, I'm begging you.
They did a couple of them when they went like, this is pronounced this, and it was like once or twice, and you're like, okay, great,
but
what about the rest?
put the rest of it. But yeah, Stormus is at the top, and then at the bottom you have there's quite a few twins.
So which one's Thor? Is it Stormmouse or is it Thrym?
I don't know, because I'm looking at it. Thrym says war as their suggested numeric claim, and then Life and Tempest is Stormmouse. So I would say Thrym, because that's cloud, right? But I guess lightning is storm, isn't it?
Lightning is that's what I was confused about. Because I don't know. Because Diancastra is trickery, so that is got to be Loki.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
My Norse mythology is probably not as good as yours because you're a Neil Gaiman fan. So, and so
we stand Neil Gaiman here.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be honest, I can see themes of it, but I don't. I'm not.
It's just because he's called Allfather, which is just.
Well, you're like, well, we know who that is. Yeah,
I know that one.
Done.
Yeah, Odin. Got that one.
But they also talk about interloper gods.
Yeah. I love some of these.
Yeah, so you have the ordering, this idea of like each sort of section of the giants is done a certain way, from the hill giants at the bottom of the bottom who don't care about the rung. They like, we just look up to people, that's fine. To the storm giants at the top who are above it all. Everyone else is jostling for position. And even then, the highest sort of say frost giant will never be better than the lowest fire giant, etc. So there's always sort of political intrigue as well, and what that means, and loads of tables on that. But then you have like, what do you do if you don't respect the ordering? And then there's plot hooks about that, and like why you might leave in terms of exile, or why you don't do it. And there's this idea of interloper gods, where certain giants might be turned in a sense by demon lords. There's a Vatprick, I believe he's called, or Vatbrak, who is said to be spilt from the Allfather's blood to create trolls. And trolls I love trolls. We did a DM's book club on them. They are grim, and I love them. There's a god for that. Oh, elemental evil as well. So if you want to tie into the Princess of the Apocalypse as well, you've got that there.
AKA Dark Side of the Moon. Sorry, it's just the prism that they're all worshipping.
So you can tell with this book, it slots in quite well if you were going to play with like one of the early images. Obviously, we've talked about Tyranny of Dragons before. Now we're going to cover that at some point in the future. But if you were doing elemental evil stuff, any of the elemental cults, then you could easily replace some of the maybe bigger up bosses with giants who have been corrupted in some way. And same with the demon lords as well. If you're going back to Avernus or anything like that, add a few giants in, have some fun with that.
This is the bit though that put me off the giants, I was gonna say. Not the interloper gods, that bit got me back on board, but it was the whole ordering thing. I was just like, this is just a huge social case structure that I'm not a fan of.
Unfortunately,
I don't really want to play in this. Do you know what I mean? Because I was just like, I don't want to deal with that. That's too much. Like, I don't want to play in that. That's not my kind of fun. If I was going to bring giants in, I'm just not going to bother with the ordering. Do you know what? Because I might give them I like the skills that they might be interested in. I think it's kind of cool, but like this social structure, geez, that's low. I don't need that.
Yeah, it's definitely problematic. Absolutely. Yeah. And we have cases around the world where having a class system like that and a case system is horrible.
Exactly.
But again, Eberron doesn't have it, for example.
No, and that's what I was like, Eberron doesn't have it. Great, cool, I'll play in that. But you don't have to, as with everything, you don't have to bring this into your game.
Again, I'm talking from my own experience here, but like I had the Allfather telling me I had to go up the ordering, and I was like, I don't know if I really like this. What's going to happen when I'm at the top? And it was very interesting for me as a player, because I knew what it was all about, but I was like, I'm questioning it quite a bit. But obviously, it's how they see it, etc. So again, you have to have that conversation.
Because it went through the social structures, which talks a bit like that. And that's where it talks about the children and the exile peoples and the recluses. And then steadings, settlements, and families.
Yeah, usuals,
But the organizations is where I was like, ooh, now I'm interested again.
Yes.
This is more like it.
Got these 3 different organizations, the Hidden Rune, the Stewards of the Eternal Throne, and then the World Root Circle. I feel like I should have a badge for every one of those. After I got recruited by the World Roots Circle. But I love the. I'll quickly talk about my love for the Hidden Rune stuff. This idea that they're talking about preserving giant lore and giant artifacts and stuff. That it's almost like Tomb Raider without the bad problematic things about it. It's like Indiana Jones. It belongs in a museum, but this idea that it's a scholarly order of giants with humanoid agents as well that go and try and accumulate the past, so that the future giant civilization can be built upon. It's not about like we're taking this and we're coming better. It's just
Yeah,
like we need to
exactly.
preserve it for future generations because giants could be dying out.
Yeah,
I just thought that was really interesting and really cool as a concept.
And I like the stewards. I mean, I don't like the term care for the lesser peoples.
I know.
I was like, I'm sorry. It's fine. Okay. But I like the idea. And I feel like that's what I would try and, if I was going to have the giants, I'd be like, yeah, that's probably the reason why he's a bit pissed off, because you've created this whole complete horrible structure to sort of, and actually the whole point is you could be here to be just stewards of not just peoples, but of the worlds. You know, like you have this magical power. You are bigger and stronger, and with your age and wisdom and might, you can help people in earthquakes survive, you know, by going there and moving big boulders and being like, I don't know, just be interesting to sort of play on that theme. I quite liked, and foster peace and stuff like that. I think it was just kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And the world route, well, it's hippy dippy. So I was
hippy dippy. We've got to protect the tree.
No, but I was kind of, so I'm kind of down with that. So I was like, yeah, cool. I like this.
I looked at both the digital and because I do have a physical copy of it. Did you notice in the digital they've got the artists' names next to each individual illustration?
I did not until you mentioned it.
This is the first time. Because this is when I got it from my D&D app or whatever. I was like, oh, that's really, oh my god, they've actually done it. But I will say, obviously, with the art, we have to mention in the room, obviously, there was this thing that came out about the AI art. I actually don't know if I could find those particular AI art pieces in the digital copy anymore. I think they've been removed.
Yeah, I think they have from the digital.
I'll be honest, I don't know what they looked like before they got removed. So I'll have to check in the physical copy to see if they're still there. And that is a shame. But I think it's good that they just removed them. And if they put out a statement and say, we won't do it again. But they've removed them at least. I think that's at least, I don't know, willingness to do that, because they could have easily 100%. Not done that. So no,
and I think that was a good move.
Yeah,
because my new favorite place on Twitter is a person that just posts real art that's done by people that looks like AI art. Do you know what I mean? It's like in those styles that AI art really love, like that sort of weird, sort of like really detailed, hyper real pictures, but they're all like by this person in the 90s, by this person in the 80s, and it's actually really, it's a great little it's something like brain rot, but it's not, but it's like that, and it's like anti-AI sort of thing, but it's just post beautiful pieces of artwork by real people. I just hope the AI don't find this person.
I was going to say that's always the way, isn't it? That's always the way. A lot of this book is focused on the sort of adventure hooks and different encounters that you can combine. So you've got these 8 different encounter tables for the different kinds of giants, including one for death giants, which are terrifying, and one for Formians as well. This idea of giants that got sent to the Feywild and then were corrupted slightly and have come back slightly differently as well. So you've got those sort of 8 different giants.
The death giants are cool because they're all like
grim,
hanging around the Shadowfell and being gothic.
Being gothic, you're like, they're dangerous. And yeah, they've got some incredible art as well. And then you can combine these ones with other encounters such as like Dinosaur World, giant constructs. There's in the bestiary, I again appreciate you've maybe not have had, there's one called, I think it's just called the Flesh Colossus or something like that.
Yeah, no, I did have it's just the one that I was trying to read all of this, and I sort of wanted to read all the giant enclaves, which I think are really great. And
they
I think
are really cool.
As we said with lots of things, I think the more D&D can give things for GMs to just I need that today, or that's great background stuff. I've done all the hard work with the story and how it works, but I need a map. And it's hard to find the right map. You're like, I'm going to do giants. Well, here's 16, 18.
Yeah, 18 different, and they're all slightly themed as well. But as we sort of said, they're not compared to the dragon layers and stuff. Like obviously it's based around a dragon, so that the dragon has to be related in some way. Here it could be like, here is the place, but you could populate it with whatever you want in it.
To be honest, all of these could be druid circle places. There's Forsaken Deep's called a meditation chamber, but I'm becoming more druid, I think, as I might even play one next. I'm kind of into it now. I'm up for it now.
I'll say one thing that strikes me from one of the enclaves is there's one called the Thundering Observatory, which is just I don't know, like
so
basically
cool.
A tower that is suspended between 2 mountain peaks through lightning.
I know. I was only hoping that one was given some more map love, because I know it was very small, very simple Dyson logos. He's good,
brilliant. Did all of them,
yeah, and he'd done loads of maps for lots of the books, the things, but I felt like that one deserved a bit of art.
Yeah, an actual art just to show you what it looked like.
It's cool. Also, Gale Eye's Tower, which is a combination of stone and solidified clouds, floats in the eye of a perpetual storm. and the storm's intensity fluctuates, but it never dissipates. When it lacks a steady will to command it, the storm wanders the world. And I just love this sort of house moving castle sort of thing, that you're just like wandering along the plain, or you're all sleeping and or someone's on watch and you're like, you just see this weird cloud coming towards you. You're like, well, okay. And it's sort of like meandering, and then you're like, and it seems slow, and then suddenly it zooms close to you, like, what? And then you're in it. And then you're like,
it's like, ah!
There's Twister, and then you're in Twister.
Yeah, looking at quickly at treasures and stuff. Yeah, they've got giant bags, which we love.
Yes.
So, and it's idea, like, again, what's quite cool about it is that a lot of this stuff is already in the DM's guide about like how do you generate hordes and stuff like that. And he goes, oh, if you want some sort of relics that are art objects, here are 2 tables that will make it the same. And it talks about this idea of magic items, going, some new magic items, do check them out, etc. But you could have 2 rules: either everything fits and it resizes, or nothing fits.
Yeah, I liked good how to make things.
So I think with that, so you got your tables, you got your enclave. And this is one thing we were saying, because there is a free adventure, hopefully it's still available, called Giants of the Starforge, which is basically, it's not included in the book because it is made up completely from the tables from the book. And it says at the beginning, like, here's how we created this adventure. We use this table for the plot hook. We got a villain from this. We use this kind of giant. We did this, and it populates it throughout using the Starforge enclave. And having a quick, like I say, the briefest look through it, it's very simple. You got, you know, it's basically the giant has taken a well-renowned blacksmith to the Starforge, and they're trying to create something, and it's a bad thing. And so you got to go stop that. And there's a few other hooks around if you want to put them in. And it's just, you just think stuff. It's so nice to see an example of it, like played through for through, and it's someone explaining their working out, which I know is so silly, but it's actually quite nice to see that. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I can imagine you get this and go, I want to create my own thing, and then using that as a jumping off point. So yeah, kudos to the designers.
Yeah, definitely. Going on to the bestiary, though, there's a couple that really stand out for me. First one, picture the scene, right? You're wandering in a forest. Maybe there's acres of forest, maybe hundreds of acres of forest, right? Suddenly this huge yellow bear giant walks down past you and drops a bag filled with some substance, right? Or a pot of some description, and out pours from it this amazing golden amber colored liquid, and you're like, oh, the honey from the gods. And in fact, no, it's bag jelly.
Yep, grim. But it's true, this idea that this, again, because people are obsessed with bags. We had like the bag man from Ravenloft. People love mimics in bags. People love
bag of holding,
bag of many things.
Bag of many object, whatever
objects,
it's called,
things,
useful objects or something like that.
Yeah, items, animals come out. Yeah. So why not have oh great, a big bag? And I like that there's a little story behind it. It's like, sometimes they're a pest, but also you could keep them in there so people don't go in there.
I love it. Bag jelly. I just saw it and I was like, yeah, what? I got to read what that is.
Yeah, I loved, for me, like, obviously they've got all the different kinds of giants, and like, what if they're corrupted by the different elements? And you got these sort of scions as well, and the ones that are corrupted by the devotion. But for me, the other sort of variations of a giant adjacent, so like the Formians, the Etten character, which has been transformed by the Mind Flayer.
Love it. Yeah, because I think more Ceramorphs, because I've had a goblin Ceramorph in one of my games, so I'm just like, I need art of that. I love that, as well as because they have the gnome Ceramorph already, which is in the thing, but an Etten Ceramorph is like,
it's grim. This idea, because Ettins have 2 heads, and it's one head comes down onto the chest and the other one stays up, and one controls the body, one controls the head, and you're like, no.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Big fan of the fire gaunts, because those are like chaos warriors, berserkers. I like them. They're just on fire and just crimson rays. It meets beams of fire from its eyes, mouth, and wounds.
Like anything elemental Hulk wise, there's just so many cool, interesting things in it. And I think for me, the one standout thing is, again, I'll go back to trolls, but they have ones like the troll amalgam and the troll mutate. And the amalgam is just like, what if we had a troll, but it had many body parts and many heads?
Yes, it's like a Hecaton Kyries or whatever it's called.
You're like, that's going towards me, that's grim. And then you have the mutate one, which is just one troll, but it's got a long head. It moves all its arms really.
It's got weird dragony bits to it as well, which are like, someone's been reading some old stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's got those old Hammer like chaos mutations they have in Warhammer, as well as like the old D&D sort of like chaos stuff, you're just like, yeah, this is kind of body horror.
The one thing I do want to recommend before anything else is that there's the Fences as well.
Yes.
Which is it talks about is it Yisgard?
Yeah.
So this idea that the giants decided to have a big battle, and then they realize that we'll keep dying, and so they bring trolls along, and trolls have this regenerative powers, so that they'll always come back. But of course, with the powers of this plane of Yisgard, they change and mutate essentially into these fanciers sort of creatures. And there's a grim, I must say, the image of there's like these little ones, and then there's like the hag one with a long tongue and a very big jaw, and you're like, oh no, thank you. I'm not going to this witch's hut. It seems too grim.
What I've got to say about that photo is the people in the shot are just like, yeah, all right, what's up? Do you know what I mean? They're just sort of looking at this creature like, so it's like they're just having a chat. I kind of like it. They're not actually scared of this person. They're just like, she's probably just saying, I'd like 2 bags of your fruit that you're carrying and that lamb. And the other two are like, yep, I'll get that for you.
It's like, cool. Yeah, if you were an adventurer stumbling on the scene, you'd be like, I think I'll just wait a moment for rushing in.
Yeah, exactly. Flesh Colossus. Cool.
Grim. This idea of a Frankenstein-esque type.
There's the more thing. More of Yenogu as well, which is this heel giant that's got this huge like mane that goes down the back of its head. It goes on all fours. It has this huge mouth, and just like you're like, that's cool.
It's like, this is grim. So yeah, so you can see it at any point. If you're reading one of these published adventures, you can go, I know what could go in here. The more of Iganu, the demon lord. Yeah, all these sort of things. I'm just, because obviously we've got Out of the Abyss, we've got Avernus, we've got plenty of places where we can go, let's put some other creatures in. And then, of course, it goes, what about other giant things like giant animals? And it's like, so I think it feels like they've had a lot of fun putting this together, and it feels like you get a lot for your thing. But if you're not into giants, or if you're like, I'm not so fussed, it probably isn't one for you, I'd say. But I would love to see this kind of thing, given I kind of wish there was a bit more for Fizzbands in a way, because it feels like Fizzbands like I didn't have as many tables, or maybe my memory is misremembering.
I think I think there was a lot of tables, but there's a lot on like how to build your dragon. Remember, there was that like how to make a role-playing dragon. You had that whole table for that, but it didn't focus as much on the lore side of them in terms of like dragon factions, and there are dragon gods. But it's that set. I'm just gonna check the section.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. I mean, again, I think both these books are. I think both Fizzbands we really enjoyed. They're not. They're roughly about just over 200 pages each, and I think, like, don't get me wrong, I really love Fizzbands. I did quite enjoy this as well, but I feel now, like, when we're looking at source books, I'll be interested, like, where else could we go? Where would there be another book like this for another kind of big monsters? Like, would we have ones on devils and demons, for example? I don't know if we would.
They used to have, didn't they, the sort of the fiendish folio would have been the old one, wasn't it? But I think, as we said, like the planescape ones, it's like there's a bit of that going on. You could sort of take plane by plane, or sort of a group of planes. You know, you could take all the sorry, it's not the demons, the Arcana Lost. What are they? The Yugoloths.
Yeah, Yugoloths. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you could have a whole one, I think, on like Yugoloths and the demons and the devils as like as a pairing, maybe as a triple set of 3 little books.
Right.
I just think they'd really incite the satanic panic again.
You'd have to have something on angelic beings as well.
Yeah, but I think like so maybe Angels and Demons pack would be kind of a really cool sort of like double feature, because there's so much lore on them, and I think you could really delve into like demonic cults, because as a bestiary, people would like, I think, in some ways to play them, but also just for antagonists, they're a great baseline. Everyone understands the sort of like, someone's trying to raise a demon, why they're doing that. When we did the Abyss, how to build your own layer of the Abyss, how to kind of create like Domains
of Dread.
Domains of Dread,
and Domains of Delight as well,
exactly, having similar sort of like make your own Abyss layer, make your own abyssal demon, all those sorts of things.
I think because the other thing the reason sort of for this book in a way, because obviously they've retired, I've mentioned at the beginning, sort of Vola's Guide to Monsters and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, which had quite a lot of history about certain classes and certain lineages as well, which you can't get any more on D&D Beyond if you still have access to it if you've bought it or anything like that. I wonder if there'll be another updated one to remove some of the problematic elements from say the orcs and the goblins and stuff, because it was very, very negative, certainly about the kobolds and stuff like that. But like the stuff about like the beholders, for example, when we talked about beholders and the giants and stuff, it was just a really interesting thing. But that's no longer access to it. So maybe there'll be a beholder book again. Could it be a short? Here is 40 pages about.
But like Spelljammer, they could have done that with Spelljammer. You know, they could go like monsters. They could do beholders, mind flayers, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but like space, like I'm trying to think of the space being, but you could take aberrations, couldn't you? The other one I'm thinking of that to promote our friends a little bit, because they've done their Kickstarter now and they did very well, which was Stuart's and Mike and Ross's Goblins, Trolls and Naughty Gnolls, with a G, Gnaughty Gnolls. They've got a book on that coming out, which is compatible with 5e, but it's rules light thing. But I think people are making it. But that's another, people love goblins. Goblins are big right now, and so they're, you know, goblin mode and all that stuff. So I think, come on, do something on, you know, hobgoblins and goblins and orcs and
they're sort of referred as, I think, let me just check what it is here. I think it's goblinoid.
Goblinoid, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, goblinoid.
In Volo's, goblinoid, the conquering host, which shows them. It says, first of all, it says like truly conquering god stiffens the spine of cowardly goblins, you know, all that sort of thing. So it's very much like a very grim aspect of it. So I agree. I think people really love that. So it's all good.
Yeah, I think it needs to be, some of the stuff needs to be updated, but I think people love goblins, and I think I don't know. I think that would be kind of, and as I said, I like orcs as well. You know, Yanti as well, interesting. Like all those things on that list.
Yanti would be a good one. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But Hamilton, thank you so much for
thank you.
I was going to say belittling me. That's not what I meant. For indulging me and reading.
I hope I haven't.
No. I meant indulging, but for some reason I think I was thinking of giants like being very big and I'm being very small. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I find you. What are you up to? Anything that we got coming out that you're like, oh, exciting? So.
Yeah. At the moment, I've had a bit of a break because there's been a lot going on. It's August holiday time, but there's stuff coming out on my YouTube channel with the Hazard Strikes, which does all the Warhammer stuff, and you can see us making some funky models for Necromunda on that, but I haven't had a chance to do much with it the last couple of weeks, but hopefully this week there'll be some stuff to come out. I've got some fun models that you can see me making on my Instagram, which is also at Hazard Stripes, so you can find me there. Not a lot else is happening. I've not been as busy as you have, because you have been here, there, and everywhere.
Very good. I love that. Amazing. It's only taken you what, 2 years? No, fantastic. Thank you so much. My name is Fiona. I run What Am I Rolling, which is a twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast. As always, it's going very well. As time of recording, hopefully, she says, touch wood, Flabbergasted will be out. A comedic tabletop role-playing set in the Roaring 20s, which was done by our wonderful friends at Realms Pod. They very kindly came on and ran it for us, and it was super, super fun. Would highly recommend. We've got some other RPGs coming out. I've got some interviews as well. But I'm still doing Alien. It's still ongoing until mid-September.
Tonight as well, isn't it?
Tonight at recording, yeah. One of the characters last session broke their leg at a really bad point, and then unfortunately they're not able to make it tonight. So they've given me instructions about what they want to happen. I was like, I will bear this in mind, but I cannot guarantee your safety. It was quite funny because obviously they roll. Everyone's having a good time because they've got to the bit where they're in the chopper, they're doing an assault. It's great, and then one of them fell, and they rolled badly. And I was like, "Well, you broke your leg," and everyone went, "Oh!" I was like, "Yeah, it's not fun and games anymore until someone breaks a leg in Alien."
Your Unveil went out recently as well.
Yeah, it's out. It'll be out on the VODs and stuff like that, and I'll hopefully have it as audio for Where as well.
It's gonna be on Where as well, isn't it?
Yes. So I'm gonna. So if you're like, I don't watch VODs because they're super boring, it's like, yes, well, you can come listen to our dulcet tones. It was super fun, and I mean, I say I'm doing lots. I actually don't remember what I'm doing, but I'll check on my diary and go, oh shit, I need to be doing this. But Alien is the main thing at the moment. I think that's everything. So
what are we doing next? Do we know what we're doing next? Can we say what we're doing next?
Let me look at the list very quickly. Next time we'll do the Choose Your Own Adventure. So
I'm so excited for that. Have you got one in mind?
I do have one in mind.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll love it.
Is it a fighting fantasy one, or is it?
No, it's not. It's not a fighting fantasy one. It is a Catacombs novel. It's the same one that I did. Oh god, I can't remember what it's called now, but I did it last October. Okay. Which you read it through and then you you have a character sheet and all that sort of thing. But I've got one which is like, I think it's like dragon versus gnome or something.
I've got
like
to just do a shout out, recommend to the person Jordan Sorcery, who's part of our Tale of Four Gangers. He has done, I think, one of the most ultimate things on YouTube, a choose your own adventure YouTube playlist, right? He did a history of fighting fantasy, but in order to explain fighting fantasy history, you watch an intro video and then you click on YouTube links in the video.
Wow.
To which video, and it takes you on all these videos. You can watch it as a linear. He's made a linear one, but he literally made hidden videos. It's all in this hidden playlist. If you click on it, you can die, and it'll say you've gone too far.
You have to send me that link. That is a lot of work. Wow. Yeah, that incredible.
A major clap. It was so impressive. So I really recommend that.
That's so cool. So yeah, so I think I've got one called, it's a Dragonlance solo quest. It's called Gnomes 100, Dragons 0.
Oh, you did tell me this. Yes, I'm looking forward to this. Yes.
I'll send you a copy, and then we can have a practice of going through.
Yeah.
Because there's always a really long introduction and stuff, and then we can have a go playing it. So
fab. Exciting.
All right. With all that out of the way, there's nothing left to say, but
see you on the flip side.